Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about how I overcame alcohol. Now, first, whenever I started drinking, I didn't realize that I had an alcohol problem. And I think that typically happens with a lot of people. I started drinking mostly once a month or so, and it was more of a social thing. Then, after a while, life started becoming stressful, and then it got to a point where I was drinking twice a month, and then on the weekends, and then every couple of days. And then eventually, with the things that were going on in my life, it became a everyday battle. So when I started realizing that I actually had a problem was whenever it became an every other day, it started to become where I was ready to get off of work. I was ready to run to the store. I was ready to get a couple of drinks in me because I had felt at the time that whenever I would drink, that it would just calm me down. Life was great, and I would just be okay with whatever was going on in life. Well, the problem with that is when you use alcohol to medicate things that are going on in your life, you're pretty much putting a band-aid on a gush wound. And eventually it will get worse and worse and worse, and it doesn't actually heal anything or solve anything. A lot of the reasons why I started drinking, I had a lot of childhood traumas, and I had a lot of traumas that happened to me as I was a grown up and in my teenage years, and losing people and losing my parents, and actually going through losing 11 family members from 2009 to 2016. And there was a lot of trauma that was going on. Well, after I had lost my father in 2016, this was about a week before Christmas, and that's when the drinking got really bad. I had wound up drinking every single day, Monday through Sunday. I didn't miss a beat for almost 4 years. And I think a lot of the reasons why it got so bad was because I didn't want to deal with what was going on. I had already lost my mother in 2009, and now that I've lost my father, and this was more of an unexpected loss, I started really tanking when it came down to wanting to self-medicate and get myself to a place where I believed that life was great. Now, in order to get to a place of recovery, what I had to wind up doing for myself was I had to start paying attention to my thoughts. I had to start paying attention to how I felt about life, how I felt about things, because one of the things that I realized in alcohol, it's an emotional roller coaster. So anybody that's out there struggling or going through it, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say emotional roller coaster. 1 minute you're happy, 1 minute you're sad, 1 minute you're laughing. And that's kind of how I felt. And it got to a point where I started becoming self-aware that I was ultimately alone. I pushed everybody and everyone that I loved away from me because the addiction became more important than anything else, including myself. It was the most important thing to me. So I would do or say whatever I needed to get more alcohol, because whenever I was drunk, I didn't really have to deal with life or the things that were going on in life. Now, when I got to a point where I realized that this was a really big issue, I needed to get help. So I wound up going to the hospital because it got to a point where I was actually seeing spots, and they checked my blood pressure and it was like 215 over like 160 something, right? I'm scared to death. I'm like extremely high blood pressure, and I've never experienced that before. Now, it would make a lot of sense that that's how my father passed away, because I feel like none of us really knew what our blood pressure was, because of the fact that my parents didn't believe in going to the hospital to get checked out to make sure anything was wrong. So my dad actually died of a massive heart attack. Now, for myself, I had gotten put in the hospital after I started seeing spots. This is when I realized that I have to do something different, that what I was doing was not working. I also had to take inventory of myself and look around me and realize that I was alone. I was in a hotel room by myself, no family, no friends, no nothing. I was ultimately by myself in a dark room, and I was wasting away and becoming more and more of nothing. And it was a very dark time for me, those 4 years, very dark. And when I decided to get help for myself, I had to come to the realization that I was, in fact, an alcoholic and I needed help. So I sought help and wound up getting put into a rehab. Well, when they put me into a rehab, they were able to give me the proper medication to keep me from going into convulsions and things like that, to help sustain me to where my body wouldn't shut down, or I didn't have real issues in my body shutting down. Because every time I would try to quit, I would go into panic attacks, shakes, all kinds of things would actually happen when I tried to do it on my own. So when I actually got into rehab, it helped tremendously. I was able to get the type of treatment that I needed. I was able to make friends. I was able to realize that there's a whole world out there. One of the first things that they did was they put me into like in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we got to be housed with somebody in this 2-bedroom apartment, and they take away all your electronics. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. It was very hard losing my electronics because that was my access to the outside world. So they took that away from me. And I'm going to tell you, it was the most refreshing thing that ever happened to me. For 30 days, I didn't have access to the world. For 30 days, I kind of started relearning myself. And in those 30 days, I realized I wanted to live, and there was a lot that I wanted to live for. I also come to the realization by meeting other people that were going through addictions as well, that I wanted to be able to inspire and help out other people that were going through those addictions, and in their dark times, let them realize that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Let them realize that people do care, and let them realize that you can come out of it. For somebody that didn't believe that for a very long time, I was able to come out of it by the grace of God. I was able to come out of it, and I'm so thankful that I was able to do so. So I wanted to change my life. Well, in doing so, one of the things I had to learn was how to forgive myself. So when I became sober, I had to face all the things that I have done in my life. And I had to face all the hurt and the traumas that I tried to mask and not deal with. Now, in doing so, I'm not going to lie, it was not easy. I cried. I went through all kinds of natural emotions at this point in time that I had never dealt with before. However, it was very invigorating, to say the least, that I was able to learn more about myself and more about life at that point in time. And I realized at that point in time that it was not about me. It was about others. And I got to a place where I realized I want to help out other people. I want to be able to lift up my brothers and sisters. I want to be able to reach people and let them realize that there's more to this life than that. You know, a lot of times we stay in a constant struggle or a constant addiction because we believe that that's what we deserve. And I'm here to tell you that is not what you deserve. That's not what I deserved. It was a self-punishment. And that's what addiction really is. It's a self-punishment that people go through because they believe that that's what they deserve. And that's not. Well, when you start to recover, you have to be optimistic. You have to be able to open up your mind and your heart to the way people think of you, the way people look at you. You have to be able to accept how people treat you based off of who you used to be. Now, I'm not saying that you should allow people to treat you bad. No, what I'm saying is you get to a place where you have to create healthy boundaries for yourself. You get to a place where you have to realize that just because you've gotten yourself together, and this was very hard for me to realize, just because I had gotten myself together, the people around me didn't know that. They didn't know where I was mentally. They didn't know where my heart was at that point in time. They only knew what I gave them for 4 years. So a lot of people had their own judgment based off of who I was for 4 years, and that's not who I was anymore. So having said that, what I wound up having to do was I wound up having to lead by example. My actions spoke where my words could not penetrate. And that's what eventually wound up happening. Now, keep in mind that when you're in addiction, there's a lot of reasons why people stay in addiction. A lot of it for me was forgiving others. The biggest issue I had was forgiving myself. And I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to heal from things. I had to learn how to actually deal with things. And it took a long time. It was a very lengthy process. But eventually what I wound up doing was I wound up relocating. I moved away from all the people, places, and things that reminded me of where I was, that kept me in a toxic environment, that kept me in a toxic mentality. I had to remove myself from others, not because of what others are doing, but because of the way I felt about the place that I was at. And it was very helpful helpful for me. Now, that was one of the things that I had to learn. Another thing that I had to learn was changing the way I looked at things. I had a very negative mindset on life. And for the longest amount of time, I used to have a lot of negative things happen to me based off of my mindset. Your mindset is everything. You don't realize how powerful your mind really is until you're ready to do something different. And your mind can take you places, whether it's positive or negative. And the way that you handle life can be either positive or negative. And of course, that is up to you at the end of the day. Now, once I was able to get my mindset right, and then I was able to get to a place where I wanted to be able to start helping out others. It took time to work on myself and get myself together. And every day, it's a constant learning experience on how do I better myself and be better than I was the day before. Now, I hope that this video has found you, and I hope that this video helps. And if it does, please leave a comment in the comment section.